Good morning. Welcome to the Florence Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, commonly known as FOOF. My name is Sally Watts, and it is my extreme pleasure to be your service leader today. Today I am joined by my ever-popular Ray Plummery, who is taking care of all the miscellaneous computer stuff. I've got Jim on camera, behind the scenes, Catherine over here, who will join us later with Joys and Concerns, and Karen Hernandez is a willing participant in the audience. So thank you all for being here today. And I want to remind you, you're watching this as a recording, right? So you can hit stop anytime you want to. Maybe go get a cup of coffee, or maybe print out the order of service that was in the e-blast so you can follow along. Just remember, you come back to the recording and hit play once again. So what announcements do we have? It's been announced many times, but our annual general meeting is today, June 7th at noon on Zoom. You all should have received an invitation to join us. It's a business meeting of the members, and you're welcome to participate and hear what the results are on the elections, the treasurer's report. We also had some community partners we're going to be announcing, and other updates on our building, etc., etc., etc. So it should be a good meeting. Zoom at noon. And all are welcome. So we have a picnic on June 14th at noon. If it's raining, obviously we're not going to do this, right? But if it's nice weather and you feel like joining us, come to FOOF at noon on the 14th. We're going to meet out back and ask that you bring your own chair, your own tables, your own plates, and food, and beverages, and everything that you need to have a good time, and we will practice respectful physical distancing, yet have a really good time. Next week we have Carrie Gottfried. She returns to us for yet another sermon. Yay! She's going to be doing a 3-part series on some of our principles, and I don't have the complete description yet, but you'll get that in the next email. And we look forward to that. And today's guest is Reverend Barbara Hove. She was in our virtual pulpit back in April with a talk titled The Holy Task of Love. You may recall that. And she's with us today for another wonderful message titled What's Broken is Brilliant. What's broken is brilliant. There's many parts to her service today, so bear with us. She's got music. She's got a reading, she's got a sermon, part 1 and 2, and she'll even do our chalice lighting in just a few minutes. So at this point, and before we go any further, I'm going to ask Jim to stop recording for a second, and we're going to insert our Spirit of Life, produced by Kamala, and Lanny, and played by Lorelei and sung by many of us. So sit back and enjoy.
Hello, friends at FOOF. I'm glad once again to be with you for worship. As some of you may recall, I recorded a sermon for you in early April. Now it's early June, and I'm glad to be invited back to share some thoughts with you. As you likely know, I'm recording this some days before you are hearing it. With the pace of events unfolding around us, it's hard to know what might be different from this moment when I'm recording to the time when you are listening. But I think I can assume that the pandemic, which has kept many of us in our homes for months now, has not abated. And I know for sure that the challenges brought on by systemic racism and the all too appropriate anger and frustration at the events that have unfolded over the last few weeks are still with us. 400 years of hatred, racism, and the impact of white supremacy culture will take more than a week of protests to go away. And yet, here we are, gathering in this strange and yet peculiarly meaningful way to remember that we are called as religious people to pay attention to the pains and sorrows of the world while not giving in to despair and hopelessness. As my sermon will remind us later, brokenness is the human condition, and we do well to remember that, particularly now. I know that Unitarian Universalist congregations across the globe are coming together to speak words of challenge, hope, and love at this time. And I know that most of them will symbolize this coming together by lighting a flame in a chalice, sign and symbol of our unique faith. As we light our flaming chalice this morning, we do so in honor of the many ways our coming together makes us stronger. And I invite this flame to rise up in beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy.
Good morning, everyone. This is the portion of our service where we share our joys and concerns. We do this to share our true selves, our vulnerabilities and fears, and our triumphs and breakthroughs. Because ours is a caring community, there is support available. And just the act of revealing our tenderness is releasing and enlivening. If you want to send us a joy or concern, you can send it to the FOOF website, and Sally will pass it on to me for the Sunday service. We have a couple of things today. First, a sorrow. Some of you may know Jana Kern, alias Jana Montana.
Yes.
She passed away on May 15th, not from COVID. Her partner Janet is here from Montana to take care of things right now. With all her health problems, she always came with a smile and was ready for contact and conversation, along with her sweet dog Buddy, this giant poodle or labradoodle or whatever he was, but he was as sweet as she was. They were sweet with each other. We will miss her. We will miss her. And I had a concern I was ready to say today, come in with today, that turned to a joy just in time. Our little cat Otis dashed out the door last night about 10:30 or 11 o'clock. Full moon craziness, I guess. He is not an outdoor cat. He doesn't know anything about the outdoors. And we tried to grab him, and he just went running. So we stayed up all night. Steve walked around the neighborhood at 1, at 3, at 5, and we were beside ourselves. And then at 5:30, he decided somehow to climb up into his outside enclosure. I don't know how he did it. It's pretty difficult. And there he was standing there. And we cried in joy. We cried. We were like, oh my God, you know, and then took a nap. So I love when a concern can turn into a joy in an amount of time. And Sally, you have one?
I do. You know, I went into partial, maybe I'll call it hibernation in January when I backed away from my current job with the Confederated Tribes and Three Rivers. And it was about a month and a half ago I decided I need to do this permanently. So I put in my letter of resignation, and today, well, let's say June 5th, Friday, June 5th, was actually my last final day of working in Florence for a paid job, and I am very excited about that because now I get to pursue my next pursuit. This is not a paid political announcement, but I have filed to run for City Councilor of Florence, Oregon. I'm going to drop 2 shells, one for retirement and one for doing something. What the hell am I getting myself into? Thank you very much.
So Sally will drop a shell for Jana.
Absolutely.
For Otis, and a couple for herself. And for anyone out there, a final one for anyone out there that's sitting with some deep pain or bursting with joy. Say it out loud and release it into the cleansing water. And so it is.
Thank you, Catherine. Love that Joys and Concerns. You know, we used to do Joys and Concerns where you would come up and light a candle. Boy, that took a long time. It took a long time. We finally resulted going with water and shells because the ripple of the water is the representation of going out into the universe. So thank you for that. At this time, I want to remind everybody that we do have a community partner. And that partner for the month of May and June is the Boys and Girls Club of Florence. And you know, it's a good group of people. And I highly recommend that if you can afford it, that you send a contribution for their benefit. You know, you can do that through our PayPal on the website. You can send us a check and we'll gladly send it to them. You can send it as a part of your pledge payment, designate how much you want for Boys and Girls Club, and we'll make sure that happens. So yeah, this is for Boys and Girls Club, the offertory. And I recommend you consider them as a part of that. As well as, don't forget FOOF. We still have bills to pay, and we still want to encourage you to honor your spiritual practice of giving. So whatever it is you can afford to give to us in Boys and Girls Club, we will receive that in grateful appreciation.
I invite you now, if you choose, to join with me in a time of prayer or reflection. Gracious One, whom we call by many names, in these difficult times we acknowledge that all is not right with the world. The pandemic has laid bare great iniquities among people and has created enormous loss and grief among us all. The violence against people of color has caused great anguish in our nation and the world. We know that there are challenges we will face in the days, weeks, and months ahead. And perhaps the greatest challenge is the uncertainty. We just don't know what will happen. Facing the unknown is hard, yes, but we do have choices. We do have choices. We can choose to be kind instead of cruel, to be loving instead of hateful, to be open-hearted instead of close-minded, and to be hopeful instead of despairing. It's hard, I know. So let us pray for the courage to do what humans have always done in hard times. Offer a helping hand, a listening ear, a kind word, and a caring spirit to those in need. Holding all those who are suffering in our hearts, let us take a moment together in quiet and prayer. Amen, and blessed be. This is hymn number 146, Soon the Day, also called Bashana Haba'ah. It was written in Hebrew in 1970 by a prolific songwriter, wrote 1,200 songs, and also translated Broadway musicals into Hebrew. And it's a song about the longing for the hope in the world. Soon the Day. Soon the day will arrive when we will be together, and no longer will we live in fear. And the children will smile without wondering whether on that day thunder clouds will appear. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Some have dreamed, some have died to make a bright tomorrow, and a vision remains in our hearts. Now the torch must be passed with new hope, not in sorrow, and a promise to make a new start. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Do you remember the first time you really understood that the world you lived in was not safe? Sadly, for some, this education comes at far too early an age. Perhaps you were powerfully wounded as a young child by abuse, poverty, or hatred. If so, my heart reaches out to you today. For those of us lucky enough to feel pretty safe in our families and homes, the discovery of the world's danger often comes from outside. I remember exactly when it happened to me. April 1968. I remember the way I felt. Terribly alone, uncertain, aware that what I believed about the world had shifted in some powerful way. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination changed forever my belief in a world of security and peace. I was 8 years old, and for the first time knew what brokenness felt like. I can imagine children years from now experiencing something similar, for this strange time we're living in feels powerfully broken. This great pandemic has upended so much in our lives, from where we can go to who we can see to what we can do. Everything, at least to me, and I expect for many of you, feels broken. And I keep finding myself flashing back on other broken times in my life. While things seem particularly broken right now, if you've lived for any length of time, you know that things are often broken. There have always been times, now and in the past, when we are forced to understand that not everything that goes wrong can be fixed, that sometimes things fall apart and can't be put back together. At some point in our lives, we learn that brokenness is always going to be there. Some, when confronted by this challenging reality, decide not to believe it. These folks develop a web of pretty lies in which to believe. Others determine that if anything breaks, then everything does. These folks go around breaking the things and the people in their lives just to prove it to be true. But most of us try to figure out how to live amidst the brokenness. Our world is broken. That is absolutely true. Spend an hour reading any legitimate news source, and if you can wade through all the pandemic material, you will also hear about murder and mayhem, hatred and terror, abused children and war crimes, petty wrongdoing, and just general unpleasantness on the part of too many of us. We do not live in the world predicted by our hymn that soon a day will arrive when all will be well. We live in the challenging here and now, when so much is broken, so much is in pieces all around us. As Unitarian Universalists, our first response to brokenness is often to try to fix it. We are people who believe in solutions. We think that if we work hard enough, think creatively enough, band together with enough well-meaning people, we can heal this broken world. And that's not a bad thing. I'm powerfully moved by the ways people within our congregations have done extraordinary things to work to fix that which is broken. Yes, I appreciate all this. But I am also keenly aware, particularly as I age, that not all that is broken can be fixed. That all the good we can do can be swept away by one inept leader, by one bad decision on the part of voters, even by what some call acts of God. Hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, floods, and, of course, viruses. I know from hard personal experience that humans are fragile, love doesn't always triumph, and life is hard. Of course, the world, at least a world filled with people, has probably always been broken. And we humans have, it seems, always sought ways to understand that brokenness. And one way we try to do so is to tell stories of perfect mythical worlds where all is good and pure and hopeful. One such biblical myth is Adam and Eve in paradise. Here is this beautiful couple, naked and carefree, living as God intended them to live, happy and safe and whole, until the snake arrives. First Nations tales often show a perfect world before some animal trickster, such as coyote or raven, comes along to mess things up. Because, of course, that's what always happens. Paradise is never reality. It is a myth. Something to imagine, to dream about, maybe even to aspire to. And yes, we humans do so long for it. One of the great 20th century myths was written by an American who, after a somewhat idyllic childhood in his wealthy parents' home back east, spent a few difficult years in South Dakota, discovering how hard life really could be. His version of South Dakota became Kansas, and his memories of his childhood paradise played into the creation of Oz. When L. Frank Baum's masterpiece, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, was translated onto the screen, one of the greatest songs ever written about the longing for paradise came into our lives. Sung and known by generations of people, it captures the wonder and poignancy of paradise and the reality of our broken world in a profoundly beautiful but simple song. Listen to this gorgeous rendition of it now. To hear Somewhere Over the Rainbow is to see an image of Judy Garland playing Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, her young beauty and her longing aglow on screen. And also to remember her drug addiction, painful lack of self-esteem, and her far too early death. To hear that arrangement is to recognize the genius of singer Eva Cassidy, whose incredible voice blessed our world with amazing versions of meaningful songs. and to remember her death from cancer in her 30s, leaving behind grieving parents, friends, and lovers. And for each of you listening, I'm aware that I do not know the broken places in your hearts, but I expect you have them. We all do. There is no such thing as somewhere over the rainbow that doesn't include the challenge and reality that all of us, every single person in your congregation and beyond, all of us are broken, chipped and frayed, seams ripped apart and re-sewn, torn and battered by life. That is the human condition. We are horribly broken and imperfect. We have sharp edges, brought on by the many ways life has caused us to break. You may not see the broken places inside of us, but get too close and the brokenness becomes clear. Sometimes it shines with a brilliance that is blinding. Some years ago, I took part in a mask making workshop. Prior to the creation of our mask, we were led in a guided meditation. Like so many of such creative inner journeys, the gentle voice of our leader asked us to walk a path, see what we might see, then ultimately find our mask and discover what it had to say to us. I was reluctant to go on such a journey. I was distracted and keenly aware of my physical pain and my inner judgment, companions on almost every journey I take. When I found my mask and invited it to speak, I expected nothing. Instead, I heard these words: "What's broken is brilliant." Huh? What's broken is brilliant. How can what is broken in me be brilliant? What's broken feels shameful. It feels painful. It is not pretty or nice. It's edgy, cracked. It rubs me and everyone else the wrong way. Doesn't it? What's broken is brilliant. And what's broken is not what people dislike or disdain in me or in any of us. What's broken is often where people find connection. A few years ago, I read a book called Broken for You by Seattle author Stephanie Kalos. Well worth a read. In brief, it tells the story of a group of broken people who, in the course of living their difficult lives, find powerful connection and, yes, even love. Kalos understands that brokenness is painful, but she also gets at a very deep level how much the unpretty, crooked parts of our natures are what draw us one to another. In her book, she uses the metaphor of the mosaic to help the reader discern the process of making something beautiful from what is broken. Most of us know what a mosaic is. In mosaic, small, broken pieces of stone, pottery, or glass are placed in a pattern, attached together with a kind of grout. Look closely at a mosaic and it feels disjointed. The piece is small and sometimes ugly, the grout discolored and cracked. But step just a few feet away and they become beautiful. All the broken pieces, when used in mosaic, reflect a much bigger picture than we can see close up. Mosaics remind me that broken pieces are made whole not by trying to glue the pieces back together again in exactly the same way, aiming for the perfection we imagine our less broken selves once displayed. Rather, when we allow our brokenness to be seen in new ways, when we accept that others are broken and love them anyway, and when we cease to view brokenness as ugly and unacceptable, healing becomes possible. In Broken for You, the main character, a young stage manager, deeply wounded by the loss of her parents at a young age, is badly hurt in a car accident. As she heals, she discovers her gift as an artist, for she, with the help of an ever-increasing community of oddballs, begins designing and building mosaics. Each work of art is created from broken shards of delicate china, stolen from Jews who were killed in the Holocaust and crashed to pieces intentionally by the daughter of the thief. If all this sounds complicated, it is. But what I found so meaningful in this book was the idea that beauty can and often does emerge not from perfection, but from brokenness. In Kalos's book, I found an echo of my own meditation that what is broken can be brilliant. And in her metaphor of the mosaic, I began to see how. Rather than aiming for paradise somewhere over the rainbow, a path we idealists often follow, we are challenged instead to create something with the brokenness, not in spite of it. We are called to use our own broken places, our tragic losses, our shameful truths, our unhealed wounds, to create beauty and blessing wherever we can. How do we do this? When I was in seminary, I remember being taught about the wounded healer. I never understood this until I shared my wounds with another in pain, and we both began to heal. I expect you have knowledge and experience of this too, don't you? If you were abused, perhaps there was a time when you overcame the shame and told the truth to another, and you both found courage. If your heart was broken, perhaps a time came when you opened it again, in spite of the risk. If your life was shattered by violence, perhaps you understood for the first time why it matters to work for peace, and did so. I cannot know what lives in the deep recesses of each of your hearts, but I do believe that the wounded, tender, broken parts in each of us are precious. Does this mean I would wish brokenness on each of us? Oh, of course not. I don't have to wish it. Brokenness comes with living. Nary a one of us is free from it. And yet even the harshest tragedies, the most senseless losses, have gifts to give. Here's Stephanie Kalos in her own words from Broken for You. She writes, "We speak of senseless tragedies, but really, is there any other kind? Mothers and wives disappear without a trace. Children are killed. Madmen ravage the world, leaving wounds immeasurably deep and endlessly mourned. Loved ones, whose presence once filled us, move into the distance. But we can never stop looking, not even after those we love become a part of the unreachable horizon. We can never stop carrying the heavy weight of love on this pilgrimage. We can only transfigure what we carry. We can only shatter it and send it whirling into the world so that it can take shape in some new way." Her words are so true. And they remind us of the task of the religious life. Not to imagine some faraway paradise that only the perfect can enter, or to give up on all possibilities and sit among the broken shards of our life in misery. Rather, we are called to transform the broken and harsh realities of our lives into as much beauty as we possibly can. We are called to create mosaics called community, called families, called congregations, and we are invited to bring our broken selves into relationship and find ways to help each other heal. As a child, I learned that my parents couldn't fix everything wrong with the world. I learned that they and I and everyone around me, all of us, are imperfect. We're all wounded and broken by loss, heartbreak, and tragedy. But as I grew, I also learned that when we broken but brilliant humans band together to create beauty and build community, powerful love breaks through. And I learned that our faith in the unity of all life, broken though it is, and the love that blesses us, imperfect though it may be, can go a long way toward creating the world we now can only dream of. It is my prayer that as we move through this time of great brokenness, we will do all in our power to bless the world through our kindness and our love. It is hard, I know, particularly now when we can't gather in person. But in the midst of this pandemic, I invite you to find blessing amidst the brokenness and trust that your brilliant spirit will shine brightly, lighting a path to the future where everyone will know that they are whole, they are beautiful, and you, are blessed. Amen. And now I invite you to listen to this wonderful song written by the great Alaskan composer and songwriter, Libby Roderick. Please feel free to sing along with her. How could anyone? This is hymn 1053 from Singing the Journey, How Could Anyone, by the wonderful singer-songwriter from Alaska, Libby Roderick. This song has been translated into many languages and sung in many different places. Here we go. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. Thank you for inviting me into your homes today. I wish I could be with you in person and hope that soon that day will arrive. But for now, I would remind you, as I remind myself daily, to count your blessings and be grateful for the many ways you have to be in community one with another. And in closing, I would remind you again of these words from Stephanie Kalos. We can never stop carrying the heavy weight of love on this pilgrimage. We can only transfigure what we carry. We can only shatter it and send it whirling into the world so that it can take shape in some new way. May you find the brilliant blessings among the broken pieces all around you, and then make something new and beautiful from it all. Now, as we extinguish our flaming chalice, may we commit ourselves to work for peace on earth. Peace, peace, peace. Amen, and blessed be.
Great Sunday service. Thank you, Reverend Barbara Ten Hove. Appreciate all that you put into our Sunday service today. Loved Over the Rainbow. It's one of my absolute favorites, so I appreciate that singing as well. In closing, I found this today on the UUA website. It's from Jane Rainey Rezbka, and I believe it's appropriate for what's going on in our world today. When all is quiet and we are small and the night is dark, may we hear the tender breathing of all who lie awake with us in anxiety, that together we may gather strength to live and love, and kindness and confidence. Blessed be. I invite you now to enjoy our peace song, which again, produced by Kamala and Lanny and Laura Lee and a bunch of singers. Enjoy it, and look forward to seeing you at noon on Zoom for our annual general meeting. Take care. Bye-bye.
Let's see if that one worked, or if we have to try it again. Okay.